Hello, friends and delegates of Classes Quinte. My name is Gloria Mellenberg. I'm your Council of Delegates representative to the CRCNA. Unfortunately, I can't be with you today, even via Zoom. And so I pray that you, your families, and your churches are all doing as well as can be expected during this crisis that we find ourselves in. I was reminded of some encouragement from Paul in 1 Thessalonians the other day, and I'd just like to share that with you. He says there to rejoice always, pray continually, and to give thanks in all circumstances. And it's my prayer for each of us that we find the strength and capacity through the Spirit to do just that as we find ourselves facing the daily challenges of the COVID-19 crisis. My presentation today is a result of some changes within the CRCNA that were announced through a letter that went out to all the churches in early February. And so, of course, with any change, it's really important to have some dialogue and discussion around those changes so that we understand them well. So that's what my presentation is about today. So I just wanted to thank you for your attention, of course, and your ongoing desire to ensure the Church of Christ, which means us, the people, are able to do our best work to bring the kingdom of heaven here on earth. And so let me begin with the presentation. Since the early part of the 1900s, the Christian Reformed Church in North America has operated as a single denomination in the two countries. And we definitely value the diversity of perspectives this brings and recognize how we have all benefited from being part of a broad North American denomination. So for example, in Canada, we know that our work on race relations has benefited largely by being able to learn from the pioneers of the US who had been working on that for a very long time. And then similarly in the US, a recent example of how a new advisory committee for the Office of Social Justice was set up using the learning and best practices gleaned from a Canadian committee for contact with the government and Centre for Public Dialogue are just two really great examples of that. At the same time, we acknowledge that the US and Canada are distinct countries with their own unique contexts, and how we live out our callings as CRC congregations and ministries needs to reflect these different contextual realities. Consider the Canadian Indigenous Ministries Committee, for example, and its work with 3 urban ministry centres and others to foster healing and reconciliation with the Indigenous people and non-Indigenous peoples in Canada. So how this functions, of course, is much different than the work of the Zuni or the Navajo Christian Reformed churches and ministries in the US. So recognizing the places where we differ and cater our ministries to best fit these needs is an important part of how we work and operate as a denomination. So this is not new. In fact, if you look at minutes of the Board of Trustees and Synod and COD, you will see a long history of trying to figure out the best way to balance being a unified denomination while respecting country-specific identities. Some of you who have been around for a while may recall the Council of Christian Reformed Churches in Canada that was led by Ari Van Eyck. Others may recall the report called Cultivating by Nationality in the CRCNA, and that report was approved by Synod in 2013. So our work in this area has definitely been long-standing and ongoing. So and recently, this work took on another step. Last year in 2019, having received some queries from a few CRC congregations in Canada about how well we've been living up to our responsibility to reflect our Canadian context, the directors of the Canadian Corporation of the CRCNA actually retained legal counsel to review corporate procedures. Legal counsel recommended a few actions, and the Canada Corporation is now taking the necessary steps to ensure compliance with all of Canada's requirements for charitable corporations. So these changes are to our legal and management structure and ensure that direction and control for the Canadian finances and resources are maintained in Canada. These changes do not impact our shared theology or Reformed faith. We will definitely continue to share our denominational vision and mission statements, our understanding of God and the world, our fivefold calling, and the other things that have guided and directed us in our theology for the past 160 years. We remain one denomination, but recognize that we are made up of separate legal organizations that function as legal and independent charities in each country. Of course, saying this and living into it appropriately are two different things. There are many changes ahead, and these changes will require work, quite a bit of work, in fact, by staff, by COD, both in the US and Canada. However, we trust that this work will be worth it in the end because it'll set us up in the best way possible to reflect our unique national identities while also maximizing areas where we can do ministry together. So to give us time to do this work properly, we have decided to put some initial measures in place for 1 year, and this will ensure immediate compliance with all the Canadian and US regulations, but it will also give us time to think and work through permanent solutions in an appropriate and discerning way. So for example, we need distinct leadership for each ministry in each country, and a few key people have been appointed to a 1-year position to help make this possible. So for example, Kevin Giraffe will be the lead person for Resonate Global Mission in Canada, while Zach King will continue to lead in the US. Similarly, Peter Elgersma will be the lead person for all congregational services in Canada, and Lise Van Harten will be the US counterpart on the side for congregational services there. So similar appointments have been made for areas such as finance, administration, and human resources. And these appointments are only for a 1-year period, and the people involved are aware of that. After 1 year, we hope to put more permanent structures in place so that people can be appointed to permanent roles. So in addition to staffing, staff are also putting together distinct budgets for each ministry within each country, and these finances will be managed entirely within each country as well, and will be reported to their appropriate national board. So another change will be how human resources are handled. Going forward, all human resource matters, including recruitment, will be managed within each relevant country. These are big changes, and yet we can assure you that leadership and COD members in both the US and in Canada endorse this direction and are committed to working through it. As additional details are known, they will be communicated to the churches. And just two final notes before I hand this over to Darren to answer any questions you might have. I just wanted to let you know that the COD did just recently meet between May 4th and May 7th. And I was struck by the desire of the body to just really stay strongly unified and working together as one church, even as we lean into understanding each of our own country's distinct contexts more deeply. And lastly, just to pray for our brothers in Red Mesa. This class has been significantly hit by the crisis of this COVID-19. There have been deaths. There's many struggles related to food security, running water, internet connections, and so I just ask that you would pray for them. Thanks very much, and blessings to you all.